Well, hey guys, just wanted to show you what I've been up to lately. I've been making my own targets lately. A lot of guys do, but the good quality targets, are the heavier paper. The thin paper, you'll see a hole, but it's jagged. I've been messing around with trying to teach myself Bullseye. I'll never be great at it. I just want to get good at it. But the nice thing about the heavy paper is it leaves a nice clean hole. So you can definitely see some scoring rings in there and stuff. Punches a nice clean hole, you can score it that way. So what I've been doing here is I made a jig for it, and you got to get good paper. This is 110-pound paper. I get it at Walmart in the office supply, and I think it cost me about $5.50 for 150 sheets. And that's the good thick paper. It's not like computer paper, just tears. So you need good components for it. So to make that, I made this jig here, just a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, some wire, some washers, and I used some of that quick JB weld on there. So I just put that on there, hit it with the cheapest spray paint I could buy. I go down to the dollar store and buy the cheapest crap I can find. And the other thing about the black targets, my old eyes just couldn't pick them up with the black front sight on the gun. So this gives me a little contrast. It's not an official target. It is a 3-inch target. You can do whatever you want. You want to do a 5-inch, fine. It's whatever you want to do. But actually, I can actually get 2 targets on 1 sheet of paper to cut down my usage of paper here. So I was just getting ready to make another one, so I figured I'd put it on video for you. So that's what you end up with. So I can end up with 2 of these dots on a sheet. So put that aside. So I got my piece of plywood, and I'm just getting ready to bore the 3-inch holes, but I just wanted to show you how I got this all laid out, and you can see it's all X'd, and I'll explain that later. So I put a 1/4-inch pilot hole in there. This way when I come in with my 3-inch hole saw, it just guides it right in. If you don't have a hole saw, you could draw it out with a compass and carefully cut it out with a jigsaw. You don't need an expensive hole saw if you don't have one. So this is my process. So I'm not going to bore you showing you drilling a hole. So let me go bore the holes, and then I'll get into the next step. Okay, I got the 3-inch holes drilled, and I was going to tell you what these X's were before I even drilled. I had everything X'd out. What I do on that is I have these, and I've had them in my cabinet for a long time. They're just 1/2-inch 18 brad, and I just go along the edges, and I measure in about 3/4 of an inch, and just tack them through the wood itself. And then I have this roll of real thin wire I got at the hardware store for various projects, and I'll just hook on 1 nail, wrap it, and go back and forth and create a X on it like that. That will support the washers. So that's done there. The washers I got, actually these are 2 different sizes. I was shooting for about 1 3/8 for the white dot in the middle. So I went to the hardware store, went through their bins, found that, and then what I wanted was a washer slightly smaller than that. This is just a little bit smaller, and I don't know if you can see, but they're not the same diameter. There's a little bit of a lip, and I do that so you don't have a big lip here that paint can drip down. It just creates a little bit of a dam for it. So that'll be my washer. So I got identical sets for both sides here. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is mixing up a little JB weld and putting dabs along these wires to hold them. And while I have a little bit mixed up, I'm going to take the big washer, my first washer, I'm going to put a piece of tape across there, and I'm just going to fill that hole with JB weld, and while it's still a little bit soft, I can cut it right off. I've been using this stuff here. This is the JB Quick, And this stuff sets up really quickly. It's like 6-minute setup, and you know, it's good for this kind of stuff. It doesn't have the strength as the regular stuff, but for a quick setup, this works out good. So my next step is to mix up some JB Weld, tack the wires in place. I leave a little bit of slack in here, so it's not super taut. So this way, when the jig come down on the paper, that's going to sit down first. One other note on these washers, because they're stamped out, and you can usually tell that one edge is like really sharp and one's rounded over. Put the sharp edge down like that. That'll give you a good template when you spray. So that's it. So I'm going to mix up the JB Weld. You don't have to watch me do that. You'll see when I get it done. And so off to the next segment. Alright, I got all the wires epoxied in. So I just put JB Weld around all the brads where the wire is connected to. I did attach the first washers in the middle here. That'll keep the white dot for us. So I still have to do this one, so I'll show you how I did this. Now, prior to starting this, I just took a piece of computer paper, took my compass. I knew that this is 3 inches, so this outer one, I made that slightly smaller. I made that like 2 7/8. So I did that, used my same center line. I knew that the washers are 1 3/8, so I made that a little bit bigger, 1.5 inches. So what that does for me is I'm going to place this over, and I'm going to drop this down a little bit for you. And see if this will come in a little better. Okay. Now what you can see the lines here. So by making it a little bit smaller, I can look at it and get an equal gap all the way around. So before I do that, you can see that's the bottom where I had the tape on it. And you can see the little bit of a step there. So I'll place this, same thing. I'll see a little bit of a space around that whole circle there. So it gives me a good idea where that has to be. So I can place that there. Then I'll place this over top of it. And I'll get an even gap all the way around on that line. So that should pretty much center me up into the unit. So now I'm just going to mix up a little more JB Weld, put that on, let that harden up, and then we'll be done with this part of the jig. Alright guys, I got the second center washer epoxied in there now. And the reason, because I use 2 washers, actually there's 2 reasons I do 2 washers. One, I want the extra weight to push down, and with 2 washers, then that equals the thickness of the plywood itself. So that's why I use the 2 washers. I did notice when I was doing this plywood had a little bit of a bow to it. It wasn't flat, and I really want it flat because then, you know, it sits against the paper good and tight that way. So I just nailed on a couple of strips of wood there, and that brought it back to flat again. So that's pretty much the jig there. And the other thing is, I do cut this exactly the same size as the paper, and I'll show you why I do that. So that's the whole jig part here, and I'll show you the next little step, and it's ready to use. So all right guys, here we go. Okay, here we are. This just a scrap piece of plywood that I spray on. And why it's important that this is the same size as the paper is, what I do is around the perimeter, I'll put the same little brads I was using, but I got 1, 2 here, and I got 1 down here, and 1 here, 1 here. That all locks the paper in. Then the jig just falls right into that, and I can spray. I got 12 sheets of paper here. So I can just spray, pull this off, lay my fresh one down, back on, spray, and off we go. It's been raining outside, but it looks like we're between showers, so I'm going to take this outside and spray up a couple targets and show you how it works. Alright guys, we're outside. It's a little breezy out here. Sun's out. There's dark clouds over there, so we'll get a couple of these things done. I usually spray them and lay them on the ground to see if they blow away, but here we go. You know, you don't have to make them super dark. Sometimes I make them a little bit lighter, but you can see how that is. Of course, I'm bumping into the camera as I'm doing this stuff. But I usually put them on the ground here and just put the thing right back into the jig. I usually don't go too crazy with the paint. You'll end up getting drips down the sides, but put that one there. We'll do maybe one or two more and we'll call it good for now. But this works pretty good. But the big secret is using the good paper. Alright, that's good enough for now. Alright, I'm going to pack my stuff up and get back into the shop here. Well, that's it guys. While I was set up out there, I said let me run a couple more here. So I ran 2 batches of paper. They gave me 48 targets. So I am going to cut these in half. I have a paper cutter. I could use them that way, but if I get a flyer, it'll interfere with the other targets, so I'll just cut them. So, the other thing here, okay, you can see that one turned out pretty nice. I like having the white. It gives me a little bit better focal point. And on this one here, as you're spraying, you could see I was kind of like spraying at angles, and that's just to get around the edge, or else you get a shadow around it. But this one here, if you notice, it's starting to get a little bit of a, you know, not a clean line. And I noticed from the other one, what is happening there is on the jig itself is, I don't have a pointer here. Well, I'll use this. Right along this edge, you start building up paint, you know, and it starts dripping down. So I'll just stop for a minute. And I'll just grab a paper towel, go in from the bottom, kind of bunch it up like that, and I'll just wipe this edge off, and just anything off the things like that, and I'll go right back to painting. On the other one, I noticed after a while the wires got real thick, and after the paint's good and dry, I just took an X-Acto knife and just scraped the stuff right off. So for a little bit of time, you can you know, make any kind of target you want. I wanted to, you know, keep on practicing my bullseye stuff, and you know, I end up blowing through a lot of targets when I go down to the range. But as long as I can bring home a couple more like that, you know, I'm shooting five-shot groups, I'll be happy. But sometimes you get lucky too. So that's it guys. All right, hope you like it, and I'll catch you later.